We're live on YouTube.
All righty. Welcome, everybody. It's Wednesday, April 3rd. You are with the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee, and we are taking testimony on H11 and H121. And we are here with Scott Brooks of Consolidated. So we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves, Scott, and then we'll turn it over to you for the record. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Richard Bailey, Lamont 2.
Chris Morrow, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southwest, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Robin Ford.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleppner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Doris Billy, Windsor 2.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
Wynn Sackup, lobbyist for the Vermont Community Broadband Board.
Andrew Brewer with Downs Ragland Martin, lobbyist for Salt Media Communications.
Jonathan Wolf with Permanent Piper, Eggleston and Kramer, a lobbyist for the Independent Television Company.
Great. All right. For the record.
And last but not least, Scott Brooks, representing Consolidated Communications.
Great.
So appreciate Chair James and committee members for having us here today. In the email, maybe I didn't see this right, but it looked like you wanted just a quick overview, maybe some newer folks to the committee.
All of us.
Okay, all of us. Okay. With respect to Consolidated. So I just want to give a brief, I just put a few slides together, give you a high level overview of Consolidated. So we'll go to the next slide. We've had a number of changes in full disclosure, I've been with Consolidated for about 3 years now, 3.5 years. Although I've been in the industry here in Vermont with another independent telco, TDS Telecom, which services Ludlow, Burnsville, and Northfield. So I worked and started actually right down the road here, and I lived in Central Vermont in Northfield for a number of years, for about 15 years. So just down the road. So been in this a long time. A lot of my career was in operations, however, and only in the last decade or so has it been more government relations related. So just kind of give you a little bit lay of the land there. So for my 3 years at Consolidated, seen a lot of changes. And you may see, rather than just Consolidated trucks rolling around Vermont, you may see Consolidated and or Fidium trucks, because we do have a new brand that we rolled out with our Fidium fiber builds. And so there was a gentleman that Representative Sibilia met a few years ago who came in as the president to kind of step up the Fidium brand. His name was Eric Gar, and we would go to a lot of select board meetings and so on and so forth. And he would always say, well, Fidium, I don't understand the connection, blah, blah. He's like, well, consider, I always said, like, Consolidated is to Ford as the Mustang is to Fidium, right? It's just a brand of Consolidated. So we're one and the same, but we kind of, Comcast has their Xfinity, for example, right? Comcast is a cable piece of it, and Xfinity's their broadband or internet piece of it. So it's just kind of think of it that way. But in that time, 8 of our senior management members, we've had a change of 5 new senior management members in my 3 years here. And those senior management members come in with a lot of great ideas. We are putting a lot of our dollars towards our applications to try to bring better service to our customers. I am still a Consolidated customer, was prior to. I live in Hartford. And last fall, EC Fiber came into our neighborhood. So I'm now an EC Fiber customer as well as a Consolidated for phone. But I did have an issue with phone recently. So I called the Consolidated 800 number. I don't have concessions. They don't know who I am. And I called in, and I was receiving SMS texts of what they were doing with my service. They said I'd have somebody there the next day to fix my problem, which was no dial tone. And that afternoon I was receiving text that they were already working on it. And they were keeping me in the loop. And then if it's not working, please check your phone. If it's not working, please hit, W for not working or whatever it was. I can't remember what letter, and it still wasn't working. So I did it again. And a couple hours later, eventually technician came that day. The morning I called that morning at 7:30. He came that day and fixed it at the home. So I think we're getting better at customer service. That's been our goal with our new senior management leaders, is to bring in some state-of-the-art computer applications to try to bring better service. Because again, if you've been in Vermont a long time, And I was kind of on the outside looking in when I was working at TDS, but the whole Fairpoint acquisition was not very seamless. And so in the last 2 or 3, 4 years, we've made a concerted effort to try to change the culture. And part of my reason, I mean, I was 26 years at TDS, very happy, and they keep looking for me. So, so we do want to change that culture. I think we're starting to make some headway. We still have a long way to go, in full disclosure. But I think the pendulum is moving in the correct direction. So, and so again, after the pandemic, one of the things that we're looking at is our main job, whether it's, you're in the call centers or in my position or out in the field, is connecting people. We found how important that was during the pandemic, connect people for various reasons. So that's our mission statement. That's late. We'll go to the next slide. Like TDS, Consolidated has grown over time. It started with Mattoon Telephone Company back in 1894 out in Illinois. And then over the course of time, they acquired, more and more businesses, small mom and pop phone companies like Kim Gates was here a couple days ago. They would acquire companies like Kim Gates and run it as a larger corporation. So, and that's the model that we followed. And it still do to this day. I don't think it's as active today as it was back in the 80s, 90s or 2000s, but so there hasn't been as many acquisitions, but this still does happen from time to time. So, but I just want to give you a quick peek of that. But Consolidated actually was formed in 1994, so at the corporation. So I gave you a little precursor of our brand Fidium. I'm not going to play the video link. It's only 4 minutes, but I just want to let you know that is the product that'll eventually, the goal is to replace our copper plant. The copper plant, whether it's here, TDS, Kim Gates, it's higher. That's why we're all replacing it. The hard piece was over the last decade was how do we do that? Because it's an expensive proposition, right? And so that was the challenge for all of us. And so now we have some funding. We're putting more capital, all of us, into making sure that we can get fiber to as many customers as we can, because we just anecdotally in southern Vermont, in the Bennington County area, where we have a lot more fiber customers, our service troubles have gone down because it's much more reliable than the copper service that we've had. Because once the copper, UV rays from the sun, once it breaks down, you get a crack in it, you get water in the cable, you get corrosion. And it just wreaks havoc with the copper plant. So you have to replace it. Whereas with fiber, once it's up, unless it physically breaks, somebody cuts it, a tree cuts it, whatever it may be, it'll stay up. Even if it copper was this way too, but even if a pole line comes over the tree, as long as that fiber cable is not cut, it'll stay in service, just like copper did. But that's the upside, is that once fiber is up, it's not going to break down. So that's the upside. So part of the Fidium rollout was that we did, and it's now morphing across all of our company, is we have new standards. We're talking about affordable pricing for customers, and I know that's one of the topics today. As competition continues, we have to continue to lower our prices to compete, especially with the cable providers. We have a 1-year price lock for, I talked about this at lunch, a few weeks ago, is that, our lowest priced 100 service is $25 right now for the first year. And then it does go up to $45, but that's where we are staying. So, we do have 2-hour appointment windows now. In the old days, it would be like, we can come on next day and we can be there. Can you be there for the day? And we come at some time. And then it got shortened to, well, we can be there in the morning, or we can be there in the afternoon. And now we're committing, and we have committed to 2-hour blocks. Do we hit every single 100%? Probably not. But that's our goal, and that's how we schedule appointments nowadays. And then we are communicating with customers. If the technician at the first appointment is running behind, we communicate with the following customers to let them know that the technician is running behind. So at least we're communicating with them now. So,
Brooke Sibilia?
Thanks, Scott. And
Yeah.
I will say that, I've referred my fair share of complaints over the years to you all, and have
Yep.
noticed actually that yours slowly some improvements. One of the questions I have, one of the things I've been noticing lately is, I think more independent kind of contractors with you all.
Mhm.
Can you talk about your workforce? Because I think that has been
So the
part
work,
of the challenge over the
yeah,
years.
so the workforce, our own internal workforce has been pretty steady as far as numbers, right? But for us to be able to roll out fiber as quick as we can, especially with timelines that we have for our partnerships with the communication unit districts, we couldn't do it with our own teams. There was just no way. I mean, in some cases, we have Greg Povey, who's our senior manager for Vermont, New Hampshire, who oversees all the construction, not only for the CUD builds that we have completed, but also for our own builds around the rest of the state, New Hampshire. He has really worked hard at because it's been difficult to get contractors because not only Vermont's building, but New Hampshire, Maine, and the rest of the country. So getting quality contractors has been difficult, but we get, sometimes there's 10, 12 crews, in the state or in an or region or geographic region for a period of time. So we get in and get out and be less disruptive in that certain community. So that's really been our goal. If we had to do with our own crews, just our own crews, and they do supplement some of our work, don't get me wrong, but they're so busy doing other construction around the state, trying to transfer, if GMP puts in new poles, for example, down X route, we still have crews that try to get out there time to try to get, lines transferred. There's a whole process. We only go to that, but there's a whole process for other entities to get off those poles, and we're usually the last one, and then we got to pull it or GMP pulls it, depending on where it is. But yeah, that's the reason why you should see fewer of those outside contractors now. We may employ a few of them because we are working with the Chittenden County CUD this year to do some more builds. We do have a build actually right now in Hartford, White River Junction area, Queechee, West Hartford, a little bit of Heartland and West Lev, because Tando's right there at the border.
I'm thinking more about the phones.
Okay.
I'm thinking more about the phone repairs. It seems that actually, I can't believe I'm gonna say this. I mean, it seems to be, you guys are getting faster with those repairs. And so I'm just curious about the workforce, how you're managing that workforce.
Those repairs, especially for copper, is all local. As far as I know, I haven't seen, most of the contractors are
So are they your staff though? Or are they independent folks?
no, they're staff.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
consolidated,
Thanks. That was my
consolidated
question.
employees. Yeah,
Great.
yeah, consolidated employees.
Thank you.
So again, just a little bit of overview there. Again, nationwide, we are considered a nationwide company. We're in 20 states. But our largest footprint is here in Northern New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, because we acquired Fairpoint, and Fairpoint acquired the old Bell company, which was Verizon Properties. So that's the history of that. That's why we're in the majority of, cover the majority of Vermont. So, but we have, I think you can see here, something that's kind of neat is we have 2.6 million passings in the United States that are possible customers. And we passed 1.3 today with fiber. So just about 50% of our customers have access. That's like whether they take it or not, that's their prerogative, but we do pass about half of our customers. So I think
So passing means it's
it's strung by their house.
strung by their
But
house.
they may want to stay with Comcast.
Get it if they want it.
or,
Okay.
Cable provider or somebody else, or they want to stay with a terrestrial product that they may have, like Starlink. So again, there are a lot of options these days, for broadband. And so at least we have the ability for customers, half of our customers at this point, to have fiber if they so choose. So that's kind of. We're a $1.1 billion company. Starlink, just give you context, is in their short, brief 10 years, 11.8 billion. So that kind of gives you an idea the size and scope. Another provider, I think, in the state, Comcast, is 124 billion. So again, there's a lot of ranges. And Kim is probably, again, I saw her testimony. I don't think she told us how the revenue is. I don't think she would disclose that, but it's probably, again, it's like going from Kim's company, Franklin, to Consolidate, and that's going to Starlink at that level. So 27 employees nationally. So again, we're not large, but we're not small. And I think this is probably the one that you probably are maybe the most interested in. And this is our fiber builds in Vermont, and that is CUD and non-CUD areas, because we have done a lot of builds in other parts of the state that aren't necessarily in the CUD footprints that we partnered with, or they partnered with us, I guess. So anyway, You can see there's a lot of homes passed, 162,000 homes here in Vermont we've passed. Again, those aren't all customers. Those are the ability for 162,000 people to get fiber if they so choose. So, fiber miles, almost 4,000 miles we've strung around the state. And so you can imagine, how much fiber has been strung, because we're not the only ones stringing fiber. So there's probably tens of thousands of miles in the last 3, 4, 5 years, on a lot of people's efforts. So I think that's a good news story. And then, we're obviously just shy of $160 million of CapEx that we spent to try to. Something.
Brooks Feeling?
Underground. Are you guys going when it's available?
Where it makes sense. I mean, if we have already underground, we'll probably follow that same path, right? But if it's aerial, we'll probably follow that same path.
If it's what?
If it's aerial, on the poles, we're probably gonna still follow that same path. So it depends.
So like if the utility is going under, you're not automatically going with them.
I'd have to talk to operations because I'm not sure where we stand on that. I know there's some hardening efforts in the state, and my understanding is they probably go in for rate cases, and so they get a return on that investment. Is my guess from ratepayers, whereas it's an expense for us.
Mhm.
So that's the quandary. So that's the quandary. If there was some type of support, I think we'd be more inclined to do that. And I get it. I know why. Aesthetically, it's nice. You can protect the plant better. I get it, especially with what's happening with climate change, right? So, and that's why GMP's doing it. So I get it, but it's a hard ask. So something new on. So, and then finally, I just think that, I want to share this. There's the number of slides I could have selected, but I think I think we've been a good partner even prior to my arrival, but I think we're trying to even be a better partner now. And, I was laughing, I was chuckling because I saw the 8,700 community volunteer hours in 2023. And we have a form that we can fill out and send to HR, and they can track all the volunteer hours that we do. And I was like, well, there should be a few more because I volunteer and I don't put it on there. So I'm sure there's probably more, but there's I'll do a little quick shameless plug, but Everybody Wins Vermont is here based in Montpelier. It's a mentoring literacy program that I'm on the board of. And so it's a great program. We partner up kids and mentors or in schools around the state. So anyway, so Everybody Wins Vermont. Go check it out. It's awesome. So I got to put those hours in. But anyway, that's just a quick, I probably could have shared more with you, but I just want to give you a quick overview. And you'll probably see more and more as we continue to grow out the fiber in the state. We'll probably see more and more fit-in trucks, because that over time, the hope is that would outnumber our consolidated plant. And again, long-term goal, don't know how long this is going to take, is that we'd like to fiberize everything and not have to maintain two networks, because today we're maintaining a fiber network and we're maintaining a copper network. So it's not necessarily the best way, most efficient way to run a business, but we have to migrate somehow if we want to stay in business long term to compete against the other providers that are offering high-speed broadband. So, questions? I know, Celia, you have a few. Anybody else?
I mean, I might.
About, I'm sure once we get into your testimony about the bills, does anybody have questions about just consolidated in general?
You put fiber into a node and then stop it and convert back to the 300 or 600 pair copper.
No, the two separate. We do have fiber in our copper network for backhaul, but if it's specific, we have a separate network for our fiber customers, and it's a little bit of a technology than cable, because cable will run out and then they have multiple customers on the same path, where ours are home run. So you have from our central office or our remote to your house is a specific cable or piece of fiber just for you. So that's why it doesn't fluctuate as much, the speeds.
But if I stay copper, at some point in time, do they make a transition to the fiber rebroadcast into copper?
So at some point, the goal is that we would contact a customer like yourself. Let's say all your neighbors, let's say 95% of them have converted to fiber and you're the last one, we'd probably come to you at some point and say, or if you call and say, I'm having problems with my internet on my DSL, it's just not steady. We'd say, well, we're not going to fix it. We're going to migrate you to fiber. And you'd have a higher speed at the same price or lower. Because right now I personally had 7 meg over 1 at bonded pair until last fall when I was able to get some fiber. I was paying about $60 a month for that service.
Right, I think I understand.
Okay, we can talk after.
Rep. Clipman.
Are you feeling any self-imposed or external pressure to get rid of your DEI council?
Again, I haven't heard of that. I know, I think on the slide, if I remember correct, in the slide, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. From
Yes.
that slide here.
Yep. There's no internal pressure that I'm aware of. That I think that I still get emails about it. I still get invitations. I think it's more difficult sometimes when you have a decentralized workforce. It's not like where everybody goes to, well, with X company, we go to the same building or an 11-story building. We're all working together. I think it's harder to get that out in the field, the messaging. But I haven't heard any message that we're going the other way or slowing down at all. So.
Jim has questions?
Searchlight
Yes,
sale,
correct,
December of this past year.
correct, finalized.
Yes, purchased,
Correct.
consolidated. And what should Vermonters expect to see as a result of that? Any change?
The change, not that I'm aware of, but I want to tell you is that based on our history prior to the finalization of the sale, is that they had like a 34% stake, if I remember roughly, in Consolidated, and they infused a lot of money, capital, so that we could build out fiber quicker and faster. So that's part of the upside of us looking at Searchlight acquiring us, because of our track record when they gave us the first infusion of dollars, we got things built quickly and done quickly. They decided they wanted to put their chips all in and acquire Consolidate. So we have gone from a publicly traded company to a private company called Searchlight, and I think our capital budget this year to build last year was smaller, but once everything got approved at each state, because it has to be approved by 20 states and the FCC, once that was approved, I think our capital budget increased towards the end. So we're actually spending more money than we had planned on budgeting for last year for this year. So because I don't think we were planning on doing, for example, Hartford this year. We had pushed that off, and that's back in the mix again. So that's the upside is with private investment of that scale, it'll help push us further out into Vermont, so I can say this right, the bucket rush, right? That's what we're really trying to do, that last mile. It's hard, it's expensive. As I think Krista Shute and the CUDs would probably agree,
Yeah.
It is hard.
Yeah. How about carrier of last resort? Have you requested in any of the states that you're operating in to be relieved of those duties, or to be put on a timeline to be relieved of that obligation?
No.
All
And
right.
I don't foresee us at least short term doing anything like that. Again, 5 years from now, it could be a different answer. 3 years from now, it could be a different answer. But as of right now, no. So, yep.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sure. So I want to make sure we have time to talk about to have you walk us through your testimony on
Sure.
the bills. So why don't we do we have until 3:30, so we've got time, I think.
Yeah.
Why don't you start with H11?
Okay.
And if you could walk us through your reflections on the bill, and I'm
Sure.
sure we'll have questions.
Sure. So again, Chair James, I know Vice Chair Campbell wasn't here, but send my regards. And committee members, on behalf of Consolidated Communications, I'm here today to respectfully oppose House Bill 11 related to telecommunications, broadband, commerce, competition, unfair or deceptive acts, VoIP service, consumer protections. There are a lot of moving parts in this bill to digest. In the end, Consolidated feels that the majority of the issues that proposed bill addresses is already cared for by other laws or statutes already on the books that we adhere to. The bill proposes a number of things related to data collection, net neutrality, a host of prohibited practice, and in many cases, Consolidated already addresses these with their own best practice or with state laws. This is a bill that tries to impose regulatory requirements to a certain degree on a deregulated service that could impede future broadband growth in the state not only by Consolidated, but by other broadband providers when companies are making great progress closing the gap, providing high-speed broadband to under and unserved Vermonters. Again, I think that's that, especially that last 15% that's indicated in the bill. Consolidated continues to invest heavily in fiber broadband around the state, which plays a critical role in connectivity, economic development, telemedicine, work from home, educational opportunities, public safety, etc. Which is not a surprise. That was what we all talked about during the pandemic. That brought all that to the forefront for sure. The bill would slow those efforts down across the broadband industry as the appetite for high-speed broadband continues to accelerate, as well as the demands for more bandwidth. As mentioned earlier, many of the provisions of the bill are already addressed. And one example is consumer protection. Today, consumer complaints are received by the Consumer Affairs and Public Information Division, CAPI, of the Vermont Department of Public Service. We work closely with Director Flint and her staff, as well as the rest of the Vermont Department of Public Service to address consumer complaints. Consumer complaints include, but are not limited to, no dial tone, certainly a big one from a safety perspective, right? Public safety. Scratch your home on the phone on the line, which again, the copper plant's tired, and it's hard to fix. Sometimes we have to put actually new copper in the air, which takes away from sometimes building out fiber, because we have that maintenance expense. A missed appointment, billing issues are certainly a topic, many complaints, porting a customer's phone number to another provider and broadband issues, porting. Folks, have you been educated on that one? Porting. Yes. So if I have my number with Consolidated and I want to port it to EC Fiber now, for example, and I want to keep my number, I can port it to EC Fiber. It takes like 2 weeks. It's a 2-week process for everybody to get verification and so on and so forth. But sometimes it doesn't go smoothly. And then there's, well, it's in their bucket waiting. And so there's some finger pointing sometimes. So that tends to be, because customers don't realize it takes sometimes up to 2 weeks to get that number ported. So you can keep that same number, because in my case, 296-5975, I've had it for 30 years, right? Everybody had it. So, and then finally, broadband issues, and those vary as to what those issues may be. I would point out back in February that you had Todd, I don't know if it's Doles? Delus. Okay, thank you. Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs with the Vermont Attorney General's office come in and testify regarding this bill. Mr. Doles' major points of concern, which supports Consolidated's concerns above, were lack of clear justification and scope of this bill. The AG's office does not support H11 as currently drafted because it's unclear on specific problems with the bill is addressing. Broadband-related complaints are not among the top issues received by CAPI, which is part of the reason I put it last. And 3, the Department of Public Service, which already tracks broadband-related complaints, would be more appropriate agency to handle that. And then another example is any broadband provider contracting with the state needs to certify they are in compliance with net neutrality requirements, which we do, because we do have a lot of contracts with the state, and we do certify that we follow this requirement. And again, Sean Brown, Deputy Secretary of Agency Administration, was in to testify and mandates all interest and quote, Bulletin 3.5 mandates that all internet service providers contracting with the state certify their compliance with state regulations. Second, that no waivers or net neutrality compliance have been requested or granted, and no issues with the compliance have been flagged to date. And lastly, AOA does not regulate ISPs, and the enforcement of service quality and adherence to net neutrality falls on the purview of the Department of Public Service, which again, we work with quite closely. So there's more of an appetite today for high-speed broadband than ever before, and Consolidated would hate to see a bill like this toward the momentum of all broadband providers are having in the state that are trying to meet the needs of all Vermonters. The industry has banded together to try and get the current 15% of Vermont locations indicated in the bill that do not have high-speed broadband access reduced sooner than later. And again, I work closely with Jonathan. I work with Jonathan and the other ILECs in the state, and that's what we are working hard to do. Anyway, I just wanted to write something down so I could share something with folks and not forget something. And so if you have any questions pertaining to this, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Let's see, who's first? Rep. Sedalia, go ahead.
Yeah, Scott, with regard to net neutrality practices in the state of Vermont, that is just for state contracts that require that.
But we do follow it.
Yep. And so how would like your regular customers know if they were being throttled or blocked or, how would they know?
That's something we've never done, first of all, but we don't need to, even more so with fiber, because fiber is, it's so, the what you can pass through it is large, so we don't need a throttle. We're actually in a position. I know Hunter Thompson, who I think came and spoke to you folks, he had mentioned that'll be hard to really figure out if people are throttling or not, right, based on technology. But with fiber, there's no need to throttle, because we do have home runs from our remotes or our central office to that customer. And I think I just heard VTEL is looking to go to 10G, which why anybody need 10G at their home, I don't know, but that throughput through that fiber is not a problem. So throttling is not going to be a problem, especially more so going forward based on copper. So
Yeah.
the only reason, again, why I think Hunter was concerned is that, especially with something like copper and coax, there are, based on physics, that you can only push so much through, especially copper is distance sensitive. The further you get away from our remote, the equipment, the slower the speeds get. And so in the old days, one of the issues was, I just want to give this quick story to everybody, just to give you an idea. The independent telcos started with dial tone, right? Everybody remember dial tone? All the beeping and hissing, and I remember it. And then we came up with DSL, right? We connected all the time. It was a great service. During that time, the cable companies, which they were focused on TV, decided, well, we want to get in this market and get into internet. So they got into it. And we were able to compete with them at that time. But then this little video streaming company came along, and have you heard of Netflix? So they came along and customers started streaming videos, and it just crashed all the copper networks around the country, not New Hampshire, but around the country, because for the most part, from the central office where everything resides, it was copper backhaul to our remotes and to our customers. So if you only had 12 meg of backhaul from a remote to a CO, and you needed a meg to watch that, or 2 megs to watch that video stream, the networks just crashed. Your neighbors you've probably heard these stories and maybe experienced it, where I'm paying for 25.3, and when I get home, I only get 1 meg. Well, that's the reason why, because it was choked. So all the telcos started putting fiber in all the backhaul to try to relieve that, but then you still have the issue from the home to that remote. So we went from like heroes offering DSL to zeros in a matter of a half a decade. And then what really hurt us from a revenue perspective was that I talked about porting earlier. When Comcast would come through a town and just go through the center of town, I'll take Cavendish, for example. I went to a select board meeting numerous times to talk to them about what was happening, why we couldn't get out to the further parts and give them increased speeds. And in a 6, 7, 8 year period, TDS at that time, which was Ludlow Telephone Company, lost 50% of the revenue in about a 6 or 7 year period because of porting. So the cable companies used to only be able to get the internet, and then the ILECs would still be able to keep the voice, at least the phone service. Well, when you could port your number to a company like Comcast, we lost all that revenue. So that was the issue, and then we didn't have enough revenue to increase the maintenance out in the field. So it was kind of double-edged sword. So that's how it all evolved for all of us as providers in the telecom business. So yes.
Yeah.
Question on this. So Scott, that's really helpful actually, and it kind of rings some things from previously. So different question. I'm hearing now a connection to opposition of the net neutrality with the specific technologies. So, we've heard about network management, and we understand you're explaining that different technologies are more challenging right now, and we're in a big period of transition. So, net neutrality provisions for fiber networks then would not be a problem.
And copper either. But we just, like Hunter said, it's hard to, you can't really test like whether you're getting the throughput you're getting, through a copper product. It's just, it's not, we're not doing it intentionally, right? We're not throttling intentionally. It's just the way the physics works with the copper.
But you're saying that that doesn't happen with fiber.
It shouldn't. I
And
mean,
so my
there's
question-
so much bandwidth.
Right. So then my question to you is, if we were to have these net neutrality requirements just on fiber networks,
I
don't
guess
even
my
know if
point,
we
I guess
can
my
do
point is I don't know why you need.
well,
Because-
it sounds like it shouldn't be a problem.
Well, that's funny because it gets kind of to I had a more of a high level question, Scott, about reading your testimony. One thing I took away is we're already doing most of this. This already, these are our current business practices, and since we're already doing this, and this is our business practices, why do you need this? My response to that is, if you're already doing it, why is it a problem to put it in statute? And then my follow-up question is, if you're already doing most of this, then how would this law, I see here that it would impede broadband growth, and it would slow efforts to roll out broadband. And I'm just not making the connection between we're already doing most of this, and yikes, if you enact this bill, it's going to slow the rollout of broadband across the state.
Yeah, it's I think with all of us, with the less regulatory, I'm going to say it's regulatory, or statute or law, we can focus on our core business, which is building fiber and not having reports that, again, I think the industry, not just the ILECs, but I think if you talk to wireless or cable, they would all agree. It's just, we just want to focus on our bills, right? And this is just going to take time away from that and dollars away from that, because we're going to be reporting more than building. So
What about I guess the argument, I'm thinking about this bill probably from a more philosophical point of view, about the argument that Fidium isn't selling widgets or hamburgers. You guys are a vital piece of public safety and economic infrastructure across the state, and you're benefiting from a lot of public partnerships. I know with my CUD, you're essentially serving a public mission, and so I'm having a hard time squaring up the concept of being deregulated with the public mission that you're serving.
yeah, again, I think it's duplicative, right? We're already certifying already, so why couldn't you take that certification and apply it to this if that's what you're looking for, right? We're certifying that we are applying these net neutrality rules and we're following them. So again, do we need to report it twice or 3 times or 4 times? I don't know. I'm just trying to see how we can be more efficient. Right? That's all I'm thinking about.
So it's time.
It's time. It's effort.
Complying this would take some time and take some effort.
Correct. And resources and money. So hey.
Brett Kleppner?
I'm wondering about the future. You guys are good citizens and you're serving your customers honestly and so forth. But there's a lot of consolidation in the industry, and some big evil telecom company might buy you guys and might engage in less honorable practices. And I think even though you are doing all this stuff, because you're a company, it seems that we would protect customers more fully in the future and more broadly with other players in the industry if we had statutory protections.
And I guess that's where, we could sit down and discuss this and figure out a plan that maybe is more streamlined as a possibility. I don't think we'd be averse to at least talking about streamlining this. There's just a lot to digest. And again, I don't think we fully digested it. There's a lot of moving parts. I think, my testimony at the beginning is, it's related to telecommunications, broadband, commerce, competition, unfair or deceptive acts, VoIP services, and consumer protections. So again, I think if we, I don't think there's an issue going down the road. I don't disagree with your assessment, but I also think that we can maybe make it more streamlined if we partner together. So.
Rep Southworth?
by looking at the bill. Are there sections where Consolidated would say, yeah, that's possible, we could do that? Maybe work on the wording to make it more palatable, but to focus being on consumer protection.
Again, I think this is a conversation that can be had. I don't think I actually didn't bring the bill, I probably shouldn't, but without informing me, I don't think I would feel comfortable going down bullet by bullet at this point, because there's a lot of things in there. So I think if we could sit down and look through it, I think we would at least could have a conversation.
Yeah.
So Scott, back to my how would a consumer know? So paid prioritization is something we don't want to see happening. So for consumers protection without their awareness, that you all are maybe steering them towards certain information and away from other information. How are consumers protected now without any kind of law?
When you're talking about prioritization,
Correct.
what specifically example are you talking about? Like
So allowing for
a customer to,
not a customer.
Okay.
Well, yes, a customer on your other end, not your individuals here, but those that you are. For instance, if you have some sort of media company or are connected to some sort of broad, maybe your parent company is Netflix, or has an ownership, that it's faster for your customers to get to Netflix than it is to get to Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
So,
I see what you're saying.
in the absence of any laws around that, how are consumers' interests being protected there? And back to my question of how would they know?
Right. Well, and again,
And should they?
from what I know, we don't do that.
Yeah.
But again, going forward, that would have to be a conversation we have to have. I really don't. I couldn't speak to that articulately at this point, because I don't really know about enough of our inner workings. But my understanding is that we do not do that.
And so it's not, I want to be clear, and I thank you for inviting further conversation. I want to be clear that is absolutely not an accusation. It's really a question about how, some of the testimony that you read from the Attorney General and others, we've asked them, how do consumers know what is happening to them? A lot of this is kind of invisible right now, and it's a concern. Okay. So I think worthy of further discussion. So thank you for your willingness. Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah. All right, one down, one to go. 121.
All right. Again, so I don't lose my train of thought, I wrote a few notes down. So again, some of this may be a little repetitive, but I don't think so. Again, there's no doubt that broadband landscape has drastically changed over the past decade and has only accelerated in the past 5 years with additional private investment supplemented with public funding. And we see that firsthand with the CUs, for sure. I always say there was a silver lining in the pandemic. It showed how important connectivity to one another was, and thus all the public funding that was earmarked across the country to try and get high-speed broadband to all corners of each state. Personally, as a Vermonter, I think Vermont has done a great job of utilizing the federal dollars to roll out fiber across the state. As you saw in the Consolidated overview presentation, Consolidated has invested a great deal of its own capital to build out fiber around the state. You pair that with the public funded dollars to Southern Vermont through the Southern Vermont, Lamoille, FiberNet, and Otter Creek Communication Unit Districts, CUDs, who selected to partner with Consolidated, and a lot of the state has been built with fiber. Hunter Thompson recently mentioned, who's the director of telecommunication connectivity, that now over 50, I think it was 50.4% of Vermonters now have access to fiber, due in large part to our builds, our own builds on our own, as well as with CUDs. These dollars have been efficiently utilized to the extent that CUDs builds are under budget and most cost effective and the most timely, as the CUDs fiber builds were finished in 1 or 2 years. The Southern Vermont CUD build out started in 2022, was completed in 23. And the Lamoille, FiberNet, and Otter Creek CUDs were started and completed in 2024. And again, that's why we had a lot of the crews that Representative Billy was talking about. So we get those done and get in and out. That said, there is just under 3% of the Loyal FiberNet CUD that will be completed this year. Also in 2024, the Chittenden County CUD also selected to partner with Consolidated to address under and underserved locations in the county, which will be built in 2025. Again, you think of Chittenden County, you think it's, more urban, I guess, but there are still a lot of pockets in Chittenden County where it's hard to reach. And so that's why the CUD was formed late. With that as the backdrop, Consolidated is working tirelessly to improve the lives of Vermonters by building out a very expensive fiber network so we can get to as many customers, off our copper plant and onto the fiber network that's considered future-proof. That has been the goal of not only Consolidated, but all the other incumbent local exchange carriers here in Vermont, including TDS, who I used to work for here in Vermont for 26 years. Financing fiber builds have been an industry challenge here in Vermont and across the nation for decades. Only until recently has the industry, and that includes Consolidated, have been able to build more fiber into all the networks because of public funding assistance. Each and every revenue stream is extremely important to all ILECs so that we can continue to build deeper into rural Vermont. When you mandate an artificial price cap that can have unintended consequences like fewer dollars to build into more rural areas with fiber, companies thinking about not investing as heavily in Vermont, but investing in other states. This has come to fruition in New York when AT&T Wireless shut down its 5G home internet product after a law that was enacted in which this bill is modeled after, to my understanding. Starlink could be a viable option for the highest cost in rural areas in Vermont, but they also filed a waiver for exemption in New York and may pull out of New York if they are not granted. And they are a much larger corporation, which I mentioned earlier, 11.8 billion in revenue, and then us. There's often talk of little to no competition in Vermont. That could be further from the truth. And with continued build out of fiber around the state by Consolidated, other ILECs, and the CUDs, along with continued efforts by the wireless industry and cable, most Vermonters now have at least two options for broadband. In February, Jerry Crandall from CTIA testified in front of this committee and stated, nationally, the real inflation adjusted price of wireless service has declined by 18 to 19% since 2017. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, conversely, from 2023, the prices of consumers' goods and services such as cable, electricity, and food have all rose approximately 10%. Consolidated is seeing this as well as our lowest tier fiber service 100 starts at $25 a month. And again, that's by design because we have a hard time competing with especially cable providers. For the first year, the $45 after that. DSL service for $25.3 is $60 a month, which I had mentioned at my house. I only $7.1 at my house until recently, and it was about $60. We are lowering our prices to compete with other fiber providers as well as cable and wireless companies. As an example, if you look at the same fiber speed tier 100 for the CUDs that are not partnered with Fidium, it's $70 to $80 a month. Theoretically, the CUDs not partnered with Fidium will be able to file for an exemption because they fall on a $20,000 threshold. From an equity perspective, how is that fair for Vermonters who happen to live in a certain geographic part of the state? For example, a Vermonter who lives in the Loyal FiberNet footprint in Johnson, let's say, would be eligible for $15 100 or 100 meg service if this law was enacted because this bill was enacted because they are partnered with Fidium. But if you live in another CUD footprint, that same 100 meg fiber service, customer would still pay between $70 and $80 a month. So even today, that same customer pays $25 with Fidium. Other parts of the state, $70, $80 a month. Consolidated is an advocate for affordability and participated in the federal Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP. And lastly, we offer statewide pricing for customers. What does that mean? We charge the same rate for customers in urban, suburban areas, say Chittenden County, let's say Burlington area, where there is competition and a lot of it, as well as rural areas where they don't have competition, where we could charge more because we have a captive audience, but we don't. We are working hard to be a good partner with our customers and the state and feel the free market will serve Vermonters well as we move forward. So, I'm gonna drink. Question.
Yeah, Brett Morrow.
So you say you're 100 is your lowest tier,
Correct.
This, and can you create new tiers?
Sure.
How does
Yeah,
that work? I'm just curious about the actual
because
mechanics of it.
we can put whatever speed we want through, but
Yeah.
I think across the nation, there's probably some marketing that's been done over the years, and probably that's why they choose 100 or 300 or 600 or 1 gig or 2 gig. I'm not in the marketing part, but I'm assuming it's because that's kind of more the standard across the industry,
Right.
not just in Vermont, but probably New England and then throughout the country. So that's the best I can give you.
Yeah, no, that's a good
Yeah.
question.
But weekends, we could do 50 meg if we wanted to. I think some CDs might have a lower threshold. I think actually even Franklin, if I remember. But so we can put whatever we want out there. And I will tell you, here's another example to educate some folks. In this room is I've been in the business a long time. When I was in, this is the same issue that customers have today with their network getting out to the world. When I was the general manager of Ludlow Telephone Company back in the 90s, there's a little scheme out there called Lokimo, right? So there was no cell phones really. At that time, maybe bag phones, and all the skiers from Connecticut, Southern New England would come up on a Friday night. They'd get to their condo or their house or whatever, their second home, and they'd all pick up the phone and want to call home, say, "Hey, we made it," because they can't call their cell phone. We made it. Well, they would inevitably through that time they would get all circuits are busy. Please try your call again later. Okay. Well, the reason for that is because the phone company had to pay T1 rates to AT&T to get long distance out of Vermont. And so we couldn't pay, and there was a cost to that, right? So we paid for a couple T1s, I think it was 48 circuits, but we couldn't afford at the time, to have 4 or 5 or 6 T1s because 95% of the time or 90% of the time they're sitting idle because nobody needed them. But yet we paying for this cost. So again, we are going to oversubscribe our service for that Friday night for 13 weeks in a row when consumers would come up. And that's kind of saying with, you have to, if you want a 10 gig network to get outside, your customer get outside, there's X cost. If you need 100 gig, or 20 gig or 200 gig, whatever it may be, as you go up, it becomes more expensive. And so you have to kind of balance that. What do you need for your haul, your backhaul to get out of your town or out of your network? So anyway, probably didn't need to hear that, but the old days, it was pod service. They would get all circuits are busy. Please try to call again later, because there just wasn't enough ports or trunks to get out of that town. And now it could be, possibly your speeds could slow down if you don't increase the transport out of your community. So, but it costs more money. So there's a balance there.
Yeah. Can you clarify I'm a little confused about the demarcation between your the Fidium service and the CUD service, and you talked explicitly about taking public assistance here.
Yeah.
Is that all strictly CUD?
For the public assistance, yes. And
Right.
then the rest of, like, let's say we built in Barry Montpelier, there's a CUD there, but we also built there as well. Prior to probably even CD even starting to build, we had built there a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
So that would be our own funding. And then we supplemented the state funding for the CUDs that partner with us. Again, I keep saying that, but they through their process, their own internal process, their board selected Fidium to work with. So
Right.
we are basically their contractor.
But all the public funding went to the CUDs. You did the build out. They are dealing directly with their customers.
And with the VCB board.
Right.
VCB board.
But I mean, in terms of the customers, like they're not Fidium customers,
They're
they're the
Fidium
customers of the CUD. No,
They're-
all right.
They're
explain
Fidium
that.
customers.
Now I'm more confused. So the CUDs don't actually do direct.
They don't have
Billing
they
with
don't
their
have front
customers.
office. They don't
Okay.
have, it's just like Northeast Kingdom utilizes Waitsfield Champlain Telecom, one of our peers. They do their construction and then do all their billing and so on and so forth. Now, I think the little difference there is like, I believe their bill may say, again, I haven't seen a bill, so I probably shouldn't say, I don't know, but I don't know if it's a Waitsfield Champlain Telecom bill that they're receiving or if they're receiving. So I should say. Is that what it is? So.
And you said you had statewide billing, so everyone's getting the same rates.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
So you've gotten public assistance to the tune of many tens of millions of dollars to build out in certain areas.
Mhm.
And that they're getting the same, they're being charged the same rate as someone in Burlington.
Correct.
Is that
Correct. Yeah, the statewide pricing. We didn't feel it was fair to our customers that we could charge $25 in Chittenden County, and we could theoretically charge $60 in Glover because we were their only option, right? Because there's no cable provider. Maybe they could go Starlink these days, but again, we just didn't feel that we wanted to, basically they would be subsidizing the customers maybe in Chittenden County.
Right.
Because they'd be paying more, and we just didn't think that was fair. So we've said we are doing a statewide pricing for all customers.
Right. So the public, I mean, you were being subsidized by the federal government. These build outs through these.
Yeah, those are done. Yes,
Excuse me?
those which are complete.
Right.
Right.
So you could make the argument the other way around that, because you were subsidized to do the build out, then they should be getting less expensive plans, right?
Sure.
It didn't cost you money.
It cost us money.
Well, but a lot cheaper than a regular build out.
It was more expensive, correct? But it's still, we spent lots of money, lots of millions and millions and millions of dollars
In the CUD area.
in the CUD footprints. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't just this. It wasn't just publicly funded. We also utilized our capital to try to, get further into their consumers network, in their CUD footprint. So, yeah.
Is there I bet we've seen this in testimony. Now I'm curious about, you said that most Vermonters have the choice of at least of two companies, or there's some competition across most of the state. It's not just one game in town.
Right.
Is there, we've seen so many maps.
Oh, Hunter could probably, to be honest with you, Hunter Thompson could probably give you.
I bet he could.
Yeah.
I'd be curious.
Yeah.
Now I'm just curious to see,
Yeah.
The extent of if there are any areas where there isn't any competition.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's why I say there are.
Yeah.
But again, that's why we don't feel in good faith that we should be charging people who live in more rural areas a higher price than somebody that happens to live in Burlington who can get Burlington Telecom, can get Comcast, can get, us, can get, et cetera, et cetera. So
And Xfinity already has,
Xfinity, right?
they have don't they have
It's the Internet Essentials, $14.95, 75 megabyte plan. So I was gonna talk about this briefly, but so that they offer this freely. They don't have any, not freely. I mean, they this is their program. They weren't compelled to do this. It's a I guess it's part marketing, part of their corporate responsibility mandate. If you were able to offer a lower speed service at a lower cost,
I don't know what, again, Kim, I think talked about what they have to charge to not make break even, would make it a little bit of I can't remember what she said, but at $25 a month for the year, we're losing money. For sure.
It's not a $1.1 billion company.
Right.
I'm talking about consolidated.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess, we're also not a $124 billion company. So again, there's some scale there that helps for companies to do things like that. Right. So for us, $25, even though we're losing money, we're doing it. I think 45, again, I would say that I don't know what our break even point is, but I can find out for you and maybe share it with you.
Actually.
But I would need to get back with our folks and see how much of that we can share.
That's at 100, right?
Which is our lowest speed.
Right. But you could offer a 50, 25 or whatever.
Right, but it's still, again, at that point, it's still, the network is being built and so on and so forth. So there's still going to be, whether it's 50 or 100 or 1 gig with the network, it doesn't matter at that point. We're still going to lose, we're not breaking even. So.
Right, because your marginal costs are are low. It's the build out that's expensive.
If we want to continue to build in further into, Vermont, then, again, we need those revenues to do that. Because again, I don't see any, certainly the public funding helped us now, but going forward, I don't foresee any. I know BEAD's coming, but again, that's a dicey thing right now as well with what's happening in Washington. So,
Rep southward and then Sibilia, and then we should probably, we have our next guest.
She had her hand up.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had disclosed this earlier today, and now we're doing a lot of CUD and BCBB, so I do want to disclose I am on the BCBB board. And I do want to note that, promotional rates are just that, all promotional rates, because we don't regulate. This is a deregulated industry, as you pointed out. And so,
Yep.
Barring us putting something in statute or regulating rates, promotional rates are promotions.
But the Xfinity is not a promotional rate. That's a set rate.
I think we can talk about that later.
Yeah, you can look it up. I just looked it up.
Yeah. What happens if they change their mind?
It's month to month. There's no contract. You do whatever you.
But they could stop offering it.
Oh, they can absolutely stop.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what I mean.
They're not going from like 25 to 45.
It's different. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rep Southworth.
Does Consolidated offer any kind of income sensitivity for low income people? Any programs like that or any thoughts of a program like that in the future?
Well, I think, again, we were, as I mentioned, I think we were part of the ECP program was rolled out. And if a program like that was stepped up by the federal government or whoever, we would participate in it. Because again, we're not adverse to helping where we can. It's just we also have to run a business, and so it's a combination. So we need to tread through that one and figure out where the price points are, and But if there's assistance, it really helps take that pressure off, right, for all of us, not just Consolidated, but the ILECs, the cable providers, whoever. So that wants to provide service to those folks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you guys. I think we ought to get the system built first and then see how it functions.
Mhm.
And then down the road, I think there's enough here between the Attorney General's office and the Department of Public Service to handle complaints. And let's get the system rolling first. And then if you've got issues, relook at this, and with your help, talking about what you might find workable.
Right. And again, whether it was a TDS or Consolidated, I think I've been pretty consistent that, I want all Vermonters to have access to high-speed broadband, and so if we can get that last 15%, I think it would be a coup. And I think with the CUDs, I think that's much more plausible here in Vermont than it is other states, to be quite frank with you. So that may come to fruition sooner than later, I think, but I could be wrong.
Thanks. I thought that was a great conversation. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thanks for all your help
If
always with everything.
And if you need to get hold of me, my cell phone number is there. You can call me anytime. I think Representative James will agree that I follow up fairly timely, I think. So
Amazing, actually, so much so that I've tried to stop reaching out to you. Because I was like, this is too much.
Well, that's what I'm here for. If you really have an issue, and you don't know where to turn, just please give me a call. That's my
You've
job.
been incredibly helpful with customer questions and stuff down in my CUD area and with my people. So really grateful for
If I can
that.
help other people, I'll be happy to help.
Great.
You can look into the break-even point issue.
Yeah.
I'd be curious.
I'll go back through it this morning and
Thanks
make
for
sure
coming
I
in.
get all those points.
Yeah.
Because there's a few more others I think too. So I'll go back and watch it again to make sure I get all that down.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Very much.
Yep.
All right, let's
Thank
just
you.
stay onward. We roll. Keep going. All right, we're going to turn our attention to SP, a solar bill that we're working on, and I don't think we need to reintroduce ourselves. So we have Andrea here. Hi. Yeah, thanks for coming. We're ready. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
Try to get on the Zoom.
Hi.
Turning back to renewable energy, electricity. Yeah.
I was thinking, Andrea, this is the second time you and I have worked in the same building.
There's a lot of history. As the years go on.
Back when Bibser was how.
Yeah.
Sorry, you like to call it VPSR. I remember that. Oh, yes, back when VPSR was down at Ben and Jerry's, we worked in the same
That's
building.
right. They come-
Now we're working in this building.
That's right.
I kid you not.
I don't.
Right, Fred.
Showing. Good afternoon.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Thank
And you
for
are?
having me. For the record, I'm Andrea Cohen. I was about to say Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, which is 2 jobs ago, but Representative Klempner and I used to spend some time as well as Representative Morrow, who were very active when I was there. But now I work with Vermont Electric Cooperative. And I have some slides. I'm here on S50, specifically to talk about community solar mostly, because I understand that is of interest to committee members. BBSR, let me try to share my screen. BBSR, well, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
For you as well.
I'm sorry to have
Yeah, no, that's okay. I can do
scrambled the
it.
neurons a little bit.
Let me get my screen up. Let me see. I'll give my email. Sorry about that. Just 1 second. Here we go. Okay. That's much better. Okay.
And I'm sorry, can I just?
Yeah.
S50 or community solar?
Well, it's all related.
Yeah, and I was asked to come and talk about community solar, but I'll also comment on S50.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
You know, the reason being that as we take a look at S50, which is our at this point, very narrow solar bill, I just want to make sure that we're talking about things that could be related either for this year or next year. And a successor program to group net metering it's another issue that's kind of floating around in the atmosphere. We've got the REPRC suggestion in H289, and we've got other community solar models. So
I'll touch on all of that.
yeah, we're
And
talking solar.
try to be
Yeah.
respectful of your time and try not to talk too fast.
Yes.
This is a problem I have, so stop me if I'm going too fast. So, Vermont Electric Cooperative, we've been here, but we were here quickly on an issue, and so just a little context to who we are. VEC are those gray towns in Vermont. We serve a lot of the northern part of the state. We have 34,000 members right now. We call our customers members. And you could see on that pull-out map that we have like districts that are board of directors, how we organize ourselves. I have this, we don't have to go too deep today because of time, but we were formed in 1938, and that first photo on the top is the first day when they flipped the switch and they got the power on. And the reason we exist at all, we're a cooperative nonprofit. We ended up filling in the farmers are basically like, we need power and no one's giving us power, and let's get together and form a co-op and get ourselves some power. And Senator Westman has some great stories about his grandmother who was waiting for the power to get to her house because she bought her electric dryer or something and was just waiting for the power to come. So there's still folks that we hear stories about who have memories around those times. We serve about 75 towns, which is more than people realize. We're actually the second largest utility in the state after Green Mountain Power. A lot of what our policy positions come from our members, perspective of our members, because we are a member-owned cooperative. You can see from this chart, we have a very old demographic. More than 50% of our members are 65 and older. And as you can see, the past few years, we're getting older. Our service territory is not getting younger, we're getting older.
So as you might imagine how that plays out when you look at energy burden, and I don't know if you've looked at the Efficiency Vermont Energy Burden Report. Energy burden is how much money you have and how much do you spend for energy, and you get a ratio, and that's what energy burden is. So the less money you have, the higher your energy burden. The more energy you use, the higher your energy burden. VEC towns, if you look at the top part of the state, those red ones and orange ones have the highest energy burden. So if you look at the towns, you look at the report, the top 11 towns with the highest energy burden, we have 7 of them. So you're going to hear us come in all the time and talking about affordability, talking about cost of service, not because we don't care about other things, but it's just such a big issue for our members and our cooperative. We do an annual member survey, and I have a lot of information, and depending on what issue you're on, I'll bring data from that member survey because it's fascinating. When we ask about what matters to you, cost of energy, renewability, carbon, in-state or out-of-state, every year we've asked, the most important thing is on a scale of 1 to 5. Past 4 years, you could see it's always cost of energy is the most important thing. So every year for the past 4 years, it's been over 4, in the range of 1 to 5. The other things about renewability and carbon free and whether it's in-state renewables, out of state, are less important to our members. Again, just making the point about affordability and cost being really important. So our priorities, we got to keep the lights on. If we don't do that, we can't talk about electrifying transportation or electrifying heating and cooling. Got to keep the lights on. That's number 1 priority, ensuring affordability. And our board of directors is very committed to reducing carbon more, than anything else. So you'll see our power supply decisions are very carbon reduction focused in our program. Even before the renewable energy standard update last year, our board, I think it was a few years back, committed to be 100% carbon free in 2023. So we're already past that. We're doing that. And to be 100% renewable in 2030. What was different with the res bill was some of those particulars about in-state and things like that. But we had already committed to the 100% renewability by 2030. I'm going to shift right into community solar. That's kind of the background. So almost 10 years ago already, our co-op decided to create co-op community solar. Why did we even do that? Net metering was starting to take off, and frankly, it wasn't a very cost-effective way to bring solar into our service territory. When things were getting jump-started there, we were paying way above market for that, and we were like, maybe give people a different option, something that isn't as expensive, isn't cost shifting. Also, of course, not everybody can engage with net metering. They might not own their home. They might not be interested in having panels on their roof. They might not plan to live around that long to find the payback. So we decided to create an opportunity for members to participate in community solar in a way that they didn't have to do it on their own property. So we launched this program, and we've been doing it for a while. We've learned a lot of lessons, and we have a lot to share about that. Again, some of the reasons we liked it and we created it: cost effective, it's competitive bid PPAs, market rates. We're getting, solar at the cost on the market. We're bringing direct value to the people that opt in to participate, and when there's no cost shift to other members. So the fact that you're doing it doesn't mean it's more expensive for your neighbor at all. We like that we can have control over where they're sited, where these projects are. We know where on the grid it's going to be most efficient, like when it's close to load versus having to send power all the way, say, from the Northeast Kingdom over to Heinsberg, which, so we were like, we know how to size these properly. We know where to put them, that it makes sense from grid efficiency. So we like that. We had some control over that with these projects. It's local renewable energy. We retire all the RECs for any sponsored panels. Like I said earlier, it's inclusive. You don't need to have a suitable site. You don't need to own a home. And you don't have to make a long-term commitment if you don't want to. Yes.
Sorry to stop you mid talk. Sometimes for me, I feel like we've skipped a step in my comprehension.
Mhm.
So I feel like we went to some of the details of the program. Could you take one step back and say, this is what the community solar program actually is? We're building panels, we're offering this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the details or,
Yeah.
okay, let me take a step back. I'll take a step
So
back.
if you
What
could
we
take a
did
step
was
back,
we- so
what do you
it-
actually, are you
Right.
building solar and then offering a
Right.
discount to folks?
Yeah, I'll show you some pretty pictures of the arrays. So what we did is we say, we want some solar in our communities.
And we want anybody or everybody to be able to benefit, even if they can't
Right.
put it in their yard.
And by
And so we are going to.
Right. So by definition, this is solar that's coming onto our system for all of our members,
Mhm.
right? We go out to bid, we work with a partner. Like we basically said, we want some solar, local solar in our service territory, not over here where the grid is constrained, but like over here. So we actually said where we'd like to see these projects. We have private sector partners who came in. It was competitive bid process. We got a few proposals. We picked the partner that we wanted to work with. And I'll show you pictures of the arrays. And then they permitted, built, did the whole thing, because that's not what we love partnering with people to do solar because we're not solar experts, like in terms of constructing and permitting. So we had a partner that built it, permitted, got it operational, and we buy the power. We buy the power, put it onto our system, and then the part that is the next step is we offer members the opportunity to opt in to sponsor panels. And you'll hear me talk about it's kind of like a vegetable CSA. You can pre-buy, and I'll get into the details a little bit, but basically we say, member, if you'd like, here's the term sheet, here's the rate sheet. If you would like, you can sponsor panels in this array. You don't technically own them. You're like leasing them for the 10-year term, and you will get a return. I can't call it investment, but you will, and I'll explain the details of how you get your value back for investing in
Okay.
the array.
So you guys pick the sites, so you know that you're putting it in areas where your grid is not constrained, it can take the power. Is it land that you own?
No. And these are lease agreements. with
Lease
the-
agreements.
Mhm.
So you say, this would be a great place to put up an array. And you have a lease agreement, then you work with a solar developer, like a company. You put it
Actually,
out
two
to bid.
steps before that, we say, hey, solar developer, find us a good spot.
Gotcha.
And typically they already have projects that they've been thinking of. So what's really the next step is them getting into a contract with us to build it, develop it, permit it, and us to buy the power.
Okay, and then they deal with the CPG 248 process,
Mhm.
and they get it permitted. Okay. Great.
All
We
right.
filled in the,
Well,
sorry, we
no,
skipped
that's fine.
the,
That's
we
fine.
skipped
We'll
the
keep-
building block for me.
We'll keep going.
Okay,
Think from the member experience, think of it as like a farm CSA.
yeah,
Like you're pre-buying, and I'll get into that. You're pre-buying and you're getting value back as you're going along. So I'll explain that a little more.
okay,
The exit option is just say you move or something else and pre-bought, you get a return back, a pro rata share. So you paid in for 10 years and you decide to move 2 years in, you get 8 years back of what you kind of invested in it. Now, I'm not saying this checks every box for everything, so I'll talk about the pros and cons of this, but there's a certain segment of our membership that this works great for. Not everybody, and that's why I'll talk about some of the limitations too. So the current status, and I'll show you pictures because it's fun to look at the pretty arrays. We have 3 projects that are about 7 megawatts altogether. One is in Alberg, one is in Grand Isle, and one is in Heinsberg. That's on the western side of our service territory. That's where the population is. That's where the load is. You'll notice these are not in the NEK. A lot of times projects happen in the NEK. Why? Because land's cheaper. We wanted to be closer to the load where it's strategic from the grid. We still got good prices, but just sharing that. And to date, we've had 27% of all the panels kind of spoken for right now. So there's still capacity, still opportunity. And pictures, because they say everything. This is the Alberg one. This is a 1 megawatt site just down the road from the old landfill. This is one in Heinsberg, and kind of a more residential part of town, actually. You'll notice that carve out, it looks weird, like what's up with that? That is because that was some maple trees that guy's family has always tapped. And it was like, you cannot cut down those trees. These trees must stay. So you see this very bizarre kind of array. Our partner for those two, for Alberg and Heinsberg, was Encore Renewables. And they worked great with the neighbors and the community. We had a good process there. And then this is the Grand Isle one, and the islands, that's a 5 megawatt. It's a larger one. And this is kind of the rate sheet. This goes through the Public Utility Commission. Don't want to dive too deep because you could, but basically you can decide how many panels you want to sponsor. We often work with somebody will say, I want to cover my whole electric bill. And we can work with them and say, that means you want 32 panels on average or whatever. And then what happens is they pay us up front. And then they get a monthly bill credit every month for the term, which is 10 years. Starting to get the point, this may not be for everybody. And why? Who has all that money to put up front, right? So when we launched this, we had a financing partner, which was basically on-bill finance kind of situation. And you would still come out ahead, you know, what it costs to have the array and what it costs to, you know, the value back you got every month, and then what you had to pay was still net positive. But I'll tell you, financing does not, like, even people with money were not taking that up, and low-income people definitely were not doing that. So I know a lot of times we talk about programs, why don't we just do on-bill financing and everybody will line up, and the community is not, you know, not looking to get into debt, not looking to finance. They're just like, let me get food on the table and the kid out the door in the morning. That is not. So I just caution when that option comes up. We have not had great uptake on a variety of programs.
Rep Southworth?
So if someone, say, can't afford, say, 20 panels right off the bat, can they progressively buy a panel if they're available?
Yes. We've had some members that have started at one level and then said, I'd like to add some more. And then, you know, I think we've let them do that up to 3 times, you know, because it gets a little, they're a different billing cycle. It gets a little complicated, but we've let people increase. And we actually have started talking to municipalities who are, we've talked about the MERC program. You know, this is an alternative to putting up your own array. Just something for people to think about. Maybe you don't have room or you're not into it or whatever. You could sponsor panels in this program instead, if you thought the finances made sense. Again, I can't talk about it as a return on investment. It is not an investment technically, but it's good terms. Like our CFO maxed out what he was a member, and he's like, this is a good deal. This is better than my money in the bank. I'd rather do this. So it's a good return for people. You pay up front, you get a bill credit every
It's
month.
like a pre-buy
It's a pre-buy.
or something, or like
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So now why isn't this just the end of it? Well, energy equity is another goal of ours, and low-income folks, and I'll show you a chart, are not doing this. Okay. We really want all income levels to participate in our energy future, and we've been exploring things like securing grants to allow other folks to get panels, you know, like a grant opportunity. And NVDA actually just secured a DOE grant that's allowing 20 income qualified folks in Orleans County to enroll in our community solar programs. So
Coming?
what?
Is it still coming?
We have the money. Yes, we actually have the money came through, and we have the money. So we're in the process of getting folks income qualified, and then we're just going to enroll them. So they'll be able to participate in this program, which is great.
So,
Yeah.
so any customer, any BEC member, be it in Laurel or not
Orleans,
well, in Lowell or can buy a panel, can subscribe to a panel, even though they're way over to.
yes. Yes.
But
Yeah, Rep Southworth?
What happens after 10 years?
We're talking about that right now because it's our first subscribers it's 1.5 years and they're going to be, you know, cycling out. And we're looking at the financials just to make sure, because we don't want to cost shift to other members, right? So we're looking at the financial terms and trying to figure out whether we just continue to offer, like they can renew for another 10 years. The contracts for the solar arrays are 25 years, or one of them is 30 years. So we still can, you could do another round.
Right.
But we're looking at the terms and making sure they make sense still.
Quick question on the total savings.
Mhm.
How does that work if your cost per megawatt? If your cost, if your overall electric costs are going up, does this have no relationship to your larger portfolio?
You get the same bill credit every month. It's a set price, and that's one of the nice things too. It's a set price every month.
This is guaranteed.
Guaranteed, and that's an attractive part of it too. You can count, you're gonna get that bill credit. So if
And
it's,
that's because you also have a long-term contract
Exactly.
with the generating facility.
right, so we can
So you're not
do
gonna
that,
get killed if power goes up.
right,
You're like,
It's like an island.
yeah. We have our contract, we passed that, so for 10 years, that's another benefit of this. You're getting, $35 a month or whatever you sign up for.
But you may end up with a bill as you electrify.
I can speak from personal experience, but electrification has caused my bill to go up by a lot. So the equity, the DPS secured, some ARPA dollars. I think they might have talked about Acre and come in, and I won't go too deep on that, but we were able to secure a grant. We invited WEC to come in to create another program that would be an income qualified program to use these ARPA dollars to do a kind of similar but different program for income qualified folks. And the program we already had was served as the model. Some of the terms are different, but similar kind of concept where you get panels, you get a set monthly return, on your bill. And this is the project that we used for our Acre Phase 1. This was a Jericho landfill solar project. We had Encore as a partner again, and we had $6.7 million from that to be able to do this income qualified program. The terms are a little different, but similarly, the participants are going to get a set monthly bill credit every month, in this case for 5 years, because that was the term of the ARPA. And we invited WEC to partner in, and all of us together, Phase 1, we enrolled 480 people, income qualified folks, really making a meaningful difference in their lives. They're getting a $45 bill credit every month. And this has been a really low admin costs. Like we know how to do this. So it's really just like we're enrolling people and, we're getting them these bill credits, and they're able to save money maybe for other investments and their weatherization, other things they might want to be doing. So it's pretty great. Phase 2, we have grant money. We had 2 parts in that grant. DPS is reviewing Phase 2 proposal right now. So hopefully we'll have another one. And we're hoping this gravel pit in Jericho, an old gravel pit site, can be used for that. Just to the equity, this is a visual of our service territory. This is net metering through 2024. Part of the reason we're still trying to work on energy equity, knowing our low-income communities are not net metering as much as our higher income communities. This is a really quick, I could go deep on this, but the east side of our service territories where you saw the energy burden, high energy burden, you could see net metering uptake there is not at the same as if you see the 32%, that's our Chittenden County district. That's, the Heinsberg and, so the income's higher there and the uptake of net metering. So not to trash on net metering, it's just, that's not solving the equity issue, right?
It's amazing how consistent the gradient is from south to north and from west to east.
Yeah, and here's another interesting one. I kind of sometimes geek out and can't help but plot things. So blue, I lost my thing. Blue is net metering. I can't see. Blue is net metering. Red is the acre. No, red is the community solar, and green is the acre. these are our districts. This is east to west. So you see like where the green is really high in District 2, that's where the energy burden is high. That's where acres we're having enrollments. District 5 is our Chittenden County district, and you could see net metering and community solar, you know, and community solar, you need to come up with the money up front. Of course, that's not going to be in a low income district, right? So I think this isn't meant to be like, that's a good program. I think it's a really nice complementary situation, right? Where we have some programs, like we're trying to get to everybody. As a co-op, everything we procure is on behalf of all of our members anyway. So even if you did none of this and you're a VEC member, you with confidence your power supply is 100% carbon free. It's going to be 100% renewable, even if you didn't opt into any of this.
Do you know what percentage of your customers are taking advantage of, like, what percentage of your customers are able to do one of these things? Do you know what I'm?
I could total. I don't have the total.
I was just
right
curious.
here, but it's interesting. Good
Like
question.
if you offer,
right, like
if there are different options, how, you know, 30% of your customers are able to benefit from
that's a great
solar
question.
in some way.
At least one.
I know, like the acre, we've enrolled, what did I say?
Yeah.
Like 480, whatever. The whole community solar, the regular one, it's only like 300.
Yeah.
So, and then net metering, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can get that. So already with acre, we've lapped our community solar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of our takeaways when I get there. I think I'm almost there. So siting matters, size matters. I won't be too redundant, but utilities know a lot about that part. Cost matters, right? We're talking renewable energy to renewable energy. We can't pay more than we need to. Like above market just these days does not work. So let's not do that anymore. We know this, and we know this, that if you want to get income qualified folks engaged, got to come up with money. So I've seen some proposals and plans. It's like, let's just do that. It's like, well, who's paying? Because you got to figure that part out. You need the money. And we caution a little bit as you're thinking about community solar. Wherever we draw the line for who income qualifies, there's always someone right over that line. You know this with everything you do, right? So we're really sensitive to, like, you might say, well, you know, it's okay if those people pay a little more, but those people might not be able to afford to pay that much more either. It's just they didn't income qualify. So anytime we're talking about like a new program, we're very keenly interested in how you're paying, who's paying, are you shifting costs, all that. The financing solution is just, I think, a non-solution. We like to think, let's come up with, you know, financing and on-bill financing, and we just haven't seen that work. We just haven't. A lot of effort goes into setting it up, and then there's no uptake. And like, why do we do that?
And then you lose the actual savings.
Right. And I know we've talked about like community solar maybe being a part of, you know, our requirements, our res requirements, and just being aware that new requirements for community solar is not necessarily going to increase the procurement, like more. It doesn't mean there's going to be more renewables, because res is what's determining how many, right? So if there's a component of tier 2 that's community solar, that's great, but it's not like there's going to be more renewables procured, and it doesn't mean it's going to help with carbon reduction either. So depending on I guess it points to what's your goal. If you're going to do any community solar, like who are you trying to get to and why, you know, is worth answering. If you would ask us what are the kind of like, what's the work to be done over the next year or two? Really? Solar for All, you heard about the other day. There's a lot of implementation that needs to happen there. There's rooftop, there's community scale, there's the affordable housing. We're all going to be really busy with that, and there'll be a lot of participation in all those programs. So that's a lot of work right there. Obviously, the comprehensive res update is taking our attention as well. We're doing our procurement and our power supply, figuring out how to do that cost effectively. And I don't know if you've heard about the PUC is working on this energy cost stabilization study, and there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there, and they've just kind of launched that. So I would say those are things to keep your eye on in terms of what are some things going on and might require your, attention and looking at. So that's the slide part. And I don't know if you want questions on that or the other parts of S50.
Yeah, S50, if you have any comments on that, that would be great.
Yeah.
And then, the department is proposing a successor program to group net metering, the REPRC program. I don't know if you have read it or have thoughts on it, or.
Yeah. Should I do that?
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. I'm happy to talk about anything. And sometimes it's that we don't know. But with that program, I think we're not there yet because we're not seeing how the money works. Like I was saying before, if you want to enroll folks at a low cost or no cost, I don't know what the terms are they're thinking about. Like, how does the money part of that work? I think really would need to get fleshed out before we would feel comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in our program, we know someone pays and they get the bill credit. I'm not sure how that would work and who's paying.
I don't know the answer to the question, so we haven't taken a whole lot of testimony on it. We did a quick flyby.
Yeah, so that one we're not there yet. I don't think just for that reason, we'd want to see understand the money part of that. I like they incorporated a lot of good principles though. Like they went with the market based and they went with utility site, there's I appreciate that because they're getting there, but that last part I just don't feel is we're there yet because we don't understand it, frankly.
I'm sorry to say, does somebody remember, is it the TUC that has to figure out or the?
I don't remember.
Tasked with doing that.
We've been told, we've talked about it. I don't remember.
The other parts, the expedited registration for the ground mounted systems.
Yeah.
We don't have an objection to that. We've had, conversations for months. Kudos to Rev for bringing that idea forward to us really early on and walking through that with us. And at this point, as long as the PUC is good with all these things, it's really just the regulators, I think, more importantly, but conceptually, we do agree with the recommendation that the PUC had about the 90-day limit on the rec assignment, like when somebody wants to change their rec. I thought they had we agree that was a good addition to limit it so that's not 5 years from now or whatever, just sooner in time. We think that's a good idea. We do not have position on the setbacks situation.
Yeah.
It's not our thing.
Can I ask him, you ever run into in your service territory, either neighbor conflict or line of sight by the road?
We don't we don't get into that. They call Mr. Farber. They call us. There's not a lot, I don't know the number, but I don't think there's a lot of ground mounted systems just to start there. So we're not hearing that it's a big issue, but we're not the best one to know. They would know better, but
okay, we're gonna have the PUC back in next week, I think, to
right.
Put a finer point on it. Great. Hey, that was that was helpful. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are there any parts of your territory, and we see in the map that the Northeast Kingdom is very lightly subscribed to net metering, but are there any parts of your system that you would be opposed to 3 or 4 people in a row putting in 25 kW system on a sideline or a sideline, if you will, not a main trunk, but a tap?
Yeah, you mean like individual households doing their own?
Yeah,
thing?
you got to think. Well, right, no, but so Solar for All came in with Mr. Sanders' office, and they have a number of 5 kW. And I recall some time ago the Washington Electric Co-op had said that net metering was they had a 5 kW proposed limit, but It was 10
Yeah,
years ago.
there was a while ago that we were intervening on some net metering because that constraint we were talking about, but we decided it was only going to be like the bigger ones. And that's why group net metering was starting to be a problem. They were like not on site. They were getting big. They were causing some financial and system issues. But individual households, we've never tried to get in the way of people doing that on their rooftop or small in their backyard.
And your distribution system is 12/7, 7,200.
Wrong person,
Yeah,
But
but I have
All right.
experts.
let's not get into
no,
that.
the reason is you convert that to amps. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I have plenty of people
Ah,
to
that's
talk about that.
So,
I'm
so
kidding.
I was.
I'm
no,
out of
so-
here. Thank you.
No, so I was converting it to the size of the protective devices that
Oh.
are available to protect the line.
Oh, the line, yeah. I'm not hearing we're having trouble in that space, but, I don't speak for all utilities
No,
either,
but you
so.
have 10 days, to
Yes,
to object on
Yes.
in the application process.
yes.
And you don't know that the 10 days is too short.
We're not
You don't have-
bringing forward any issues with that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thanks for the end of the day. I
for
know.
coming. Yeah,
thank
Jack,
you.
we can go. off.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
can I have a couple of minutes?
Sure. Rep backward.
So this pertains to some testimony that we took on Tuesday.
So can we let it?
Is the
Not for
question
me.
for Andrea?
Absolutely.
Not for
You
me.
can go.
Got it. Thank
Everybody
you.
else can go.
Yeah.
Let's.
Thank you. On the 1 o'clock session that we had, Joanna Miller from BNRC made some comments that really bothered me.
Okay.
Rep Kleppner had asked a question about the charge fossil heating fuels, adding a charge and increasing that charge over time, and how to protect low and moderate income from economic burden who don't convert, maybe not convert to electric or, clean energy within maybe 20 years. And her replies, one of them was, hold some Vermonters harmless. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Direct rebates, that's up for debate. But the one that really bothered me was she stated, oh, maybe just send them an EBT card or something. To me, that is the whole thing behind what we need to be careful of. Because if we create something where we're trying to fix it by sending an EBT card to offset an increase in another cost, we're creating another cost. And I don't think that is good practice. That really bothered me for a long time. That is not an appropriate way to fix a problem. That's just adding a problem, in my opinion.
Thanks. Thank you. I can't reply for Joey. I think she was just tossing out ideas, but I'm glad
Yep.
I'm glad you provided that feedback.
Yeah, and I actually left here. And the next morning at 3 o'clock, I was up and I was rewatching that video to make sure that I heard that correctly. And if anybody cares to see it, at 2 hours, 12 minutes and 36 seconds into that video, that's where it is. And I think we need to, as a committee, keep that in the back of our heads, that we need to be very cognizant of what we do will affect low income people.
Raquel, did you have?
Well, my acronym for EBT is expenses by taxpayer. And that if you're going to finance electronic balance transfer cards through a system, it's another layer on increasing the cost to get value back to the target. It costs a lot of money to account for that transfer of funds to get it to the targeted person where let the market bear. I think that she represented a whole conglomeration of organizations.
Yep.
Some of which have other issues on our wall. And I would kind of like to see some other opposition, some people who don't have the same opinion as she had. This was a global save all of conservation. And I brought up the CO2 and she responded to me about the CO2. There is no difference. It's just how old the carbon is that we would burn.
So I guess, about the EVT thing, or I guess about any testimony we take here. Folks come in, we try to invite a really broad array of people into our committee to present their opinions. And I think so far this year I've been trying to do, and I think we as a committee have been trying to do a pretty good job of hearing a broad range of ideas and opinions. And it's important to remember that they're all just opinions. And so we've heard from, I think that the leading category of folks that we've had in our committee so far are members of the Scott administration. We've had a lot of folks in representing our agencies and our departments. A lot of folks in representing our agencies and departments. So I think that we've done a really good job of hearing from folks from the executive branch. We've had some advocates in. Sure, we always do that. We've had people in who are clearly identifying that they represent, the VNRC, or they represent the renewable energy field, or they represent the youth climate lobby. So I feel like we've heard a broad array of opinions, and I think it's important to remember that they're all just opinions for us to weigh out. And there's a chasm of difference between Joanna Miller coming in and tossing out an idea and that being something that our committee is going to take up, consider, put on the table, put into a bill. I don't think anybody's talking about that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying that this is something that we need to be very careful about doing when we're thinking about an energy transition and putting that burden on low-income people. That is all I was trying to say.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That just brought it very forefront to me.
Yeah, and I hope anyway that our conversations in this committee are always reflecting. I think a lot of us agree on that.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we probably all agree about that. And one thing I've been trying to point out in our conversations is how do we I think it's a shared value, honestly, around this table. And I think that sometimes we, don't agree on the way to carry it out, but I think we found common ground on that. So I'm glad you brought it up, Rep. Southworth.
That was very concerning.
I think it's important. Yeah, and I'm sorry that her comment, bothered you. I hear things in here all the time that bother me, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
So, there's plenty of testimony we hear that I don't agree with or doesn't sit well with me. And Rep. Kleppner?
So, former, public, Tower, the predecessor of the PUC, when he sat and he said, I'm appointed to the climate council or whatever it was, with two of them. And then he said, but this is my own opinion.
Mhm.
So I think that who's got opinion counter to that from the climate council, something organization to come in and the basis we had was that 31% appropriate fee to add to fossil fuels to part of which was to put wood pellet stoves and the like in for horrible heat. So in other words, the CO2 question was that CO2 coming from new wood versus burning old fossil fuel of oil. and that cross transfer of, I'm just using 31 cents because that was the number that he had thrown out. And I think that the state people, the PUC testified way back in January that the numbers weren't right. With, I think, was it 6 cents or something was,
Are you talking about the Affordable Heat Act?
I think that's what it all comes down to. Whatever they're putting the tag on for adding the cost that the Ms. Moore, is that her name? Julie
Uh-huh.
said that they were going to transfer the cost versus some sort of financial aid to the income sensitive people who don't have the income.
Right.
I'm confused.
That they were gonna make people whole by some sort of financial transfer, EBT card, to subsidize the people who couldn't afford it.
Are you talking
Not
about?
really more.
Oh, Joanna Miller?
Joanna Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
that's-
All right, yeah, I'm sorry, Joanna Miller. Well, right, and I related that to the same thing that Mr. Coward spoke about in the escalating what was an appropriate fee to put on fuel oil
Yeah.
to enhance, it was an expansion of the energy efficiency, putting energy efficiency
Mhm.
from the electric companies, from the electric revenues into the fuel oil, the heat, the
Yeah.
thermal. So that transit, that all linked together, several changes even on here.
Yeah, we've definitely heard testimony from a lot of people who have a lot of different ideas about how we can fund things like weatherization. Rich has been working in the energy field for a long time. He had some ideas. Joey tossed out some ideas. That's our job. It is to bring people in and let them tell us their ideas.
Right, BC just came in here and showed us the demographics of their member base.
Uh-huh.
And those people that are over 65. My wife even raises the question of, at our age, will we be around long enough? Not just around, but will the home meet our needs in 10 years from now? You know, nobody, I don't know, but that I don't see a lot of the types of homes in my service territory, or excuse me, my representative district, with big influx of where the heat pumps and the like.
Mhm.
I see a few, several, but I don't just see every house putting them in. They're not expanding that quickly. There are many that happen.
Rep. Sebeli, did you have?
Yeah, I will just say, I want to agree very much with you that I think it is I know it's a shared goal of all of us, on low income folks. And for me, I am crystal clear that low income folks are paying. They're paying if we do nothing. And, the question is, what we do, how does that work? And I think it's appropriate for us to have those discussions and to have a laser focus on that. But I absolutely, I hope that we all agree that doing nothing actually is just guaranteeing their pay. I mean, it's a system that this is an industry sector that is transitioning. And when that happens, it is always, always, always the low income and vulnerable that get left behind. And so, I think these are important problems for us to solve. I don't remember Rep. Southworth, that comment, so I cannot respond to it.
I can replay it to you.
I don't question it at all,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to speak for Joey Miller, but I will tell you that I have heard things in this committee and other committees where we have discussed thermal that have been really upsetting to me, including from, folks who are really responsible for our government, saying things, like guessing about things. And as the chair has said, I think and sometimes I really struggle with this. It's up to us to be able to, and here's the part I struggle with, dispassionately receive that information and sift through it together. And so finding those places where we do agree and being able to come back to them around affordability, for instance, I think is really important.
Victoria,
I'll just add because, oh, is it you?
sorry, were you
I don't
next in line?
Oh, Rep. Kleppner's been sitting there waiting.
Just point.
Okay.
Sorry, Rep. Kleppner?
Graciously
You
passed
go
it.
first.
I
Oh,
graciously
you did?
passed
All
it
right,
to Rep.
sorry.
Allen and was never admitted back in the line.
Sorry about
Okay, I
that.
forgot.
No, no worries. I think I want to make one small point, and one slightly larger point. The small point is relative to Mr. Coward saying, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not the Climate Council. We were instructed by council, by legal counsel, that none of us on the Climate Council was authorized to speak on behalf of the Climate Council, including the secretary of the agency of administration, who is the chair of the Climate Council. Even she's not allowed to speak on behalf. Like the only thing that speaks on behalf of the Climate Council is the written report that the Climate Council
Which
passed
I asked.
by vote.
I asked about.
Yeah. So I think that is all he was intending to say by that. And the larger point I want to make is that I spent 3+ years on the Climate Council, and it was my ongoing experience that the issue of how to protect the people who cannot or choose not to electrify their homes, who are low income, was routinely ignored, in spite of my bringing it up regularly. And I think we've heard some of that here, that the vision of this beautiful future that these people have, the passion they have for it, causes them to lose sight of that segment of what's happening. And the fact that they truly believe that a low income person will be better off once electrified, which I think is probably true. Your monthly heating bill goes down if you're using heat pumps, and your monthly bills go down if you have an electric car, if you happen to live in a place with roads that work. But that is true. And I think that's as far as a lot of them, as much thought as a lot of them give. And they're right, this will be good for low income people. And the next step is, but what about the next 20 years of the transition? Is just not something that is top of mind or regularly included in their thinking or in their plan. And I agree 100% with Rep. Southworth that it is our job, when that gets ignored by the advocates for the transition, that we make sure that, that's our job, is to represent those people and to make sure that their interests are protected in everything we do. And I apologize for banging on the table.
Where's your cue?
Yeah, I was thinking.
Thank you. I needed to bring that up.
That's great. If it makes you feel any better, and it probably won't, I hear testimony in here all the time that I don't agree with and that I go home and stew on later because I don't like where they're coming from. So, that is our job, honestly, to sit here and listen to a really wide range of views and a really wide range of ideas and ask respectful questions, and sort it through and try to come back as a committee to those shared values. And I know that probably doesn't make you feel any better, but
Had it not been for those 3 letters that were said, you never would have heard anything more from me. But those 3 letters, EBT, were enough to really bother me.
yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate that you have, going through the environmental justice law on a general one.
Yeah.
Because I think as we get more, acquainted with that, that is how you can frame the transition and protect people by having that front and center as you do program design from the outset. So as we think about heating programs, we heard from Rich Howard, you can design the program to the financial, max, to the most vulnerable population. You design that, you design the program from. So I feel
From the
like
beginning.
from
Well,
the beginning,
Yeah, and I would say
From
the clean heat standard was designed that way and is not ready for prime time, because it needs additional work.
Yeah.
But it was,
right?
and that's what happens when we're doing new.
Yeah, can I just,
And if
I've
we,
been thinking about this, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. I'm trying to debate whether we're still talking about policy. I guess we are. We're still online. Okay.
I am.
Okay. Oh, well, good. I wasn't sure where you were going with this.
Yeah.
So,
Jackson OT,
yeah.
And this is, an idea that I have not thought about a great deal, but, I was looking at it.
Want to think about it? some more? Representative Plevner?
I'm gonna think about it with you. We're gonna think this through. No, I was looking at an email today from an environmental advocate, and it got to the issue of low income people all the way at the bottom, almost as an afterthought. I was thinking, that has to be our first thought, and that made me think about. I think one way to approach this, and as I said, this is a first draft idea, not even a first draft idea. But could we create a program that stabilizes the cost of fossil fuel heating first for low income people? Put that in place so that the cost of fossil fuels will never go up more than 3% a year, that the state somehow intervenes in that market, stabilizes the cost of fossil fuel heating for low income people. And then we know that will not be a transition issue, that they will be able to afford heat as long as they choose to use fossil fuel. And then we can add the electrification programs on top of it. And if it raises other people's cost of heating by 8 cents, the PUC estimated, or 58 cents at year 10 or whatever, we don't have to try to jerry rig a solution that makes it work for lower income people. So there's a.
If you're talking about regulating rates, man,
It's good. Yeah, we got.
Regulate fossil fuel.
That was an easy yes.
Yeah.
I know they only sell futures out, so I think I'm quoting May 15th, settlement date. I don't know.
So,
Yeah. As I say, I have no idea how the mechanics of that would work and how much it would cost the state.
that sounds like a subsidy for fossil fuel companies like the ACP.
It does
So
sound
subsidy
like it-
for the big telecommunications providers.
It might be that this, yeah, I mean, that's one way to do it, right? The state pays the difference between whatever the market rate is and whatever we've decided is affordable, right? Like,
But,
that's one way to do it.
but you know what?
how would we,
I'm
You're
listening.
already doing that.
would we
by
pay for that
subsidizing
through a tax
low-income
or
people,
fee?
Because you're giving them a hybrid heating model. They get to reduce their fossil fuel, which is the more unpredictable cost. You know what I mean?
I do, but,
it's,
and we are talking about the people who, for whatever reason, don't do, who are heating the way they're heating right now for a meaningful amount of time. And there are going to be some of those people, no matter what we do, they're going to be that group of people. I don't know how many individuals we're talking about, how many households we're talking about, but it was just a thought as a different way to come at this issue. And
I think your older demographic fall into that heavily.
yeah, I think you're right. You're absolutely right.
Isn't this
And like we saw, like
they all just got fired. So,
the feds fired all.
yep, all the light years are gone. Yeah. So,
that older demographic too might need some cooling
yeah.
to be comfortable and safe in their
That
homes,
is
which
true.
is another reason for heat pumps helping and being accessible to people with limited budgets.
So let's see. So next week, I think we can go off live.
Let's have this conversation. Yes.
Well, I was just gonna say, we can stay on that, it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna be out next week. Hey, everybody. I'm sorry, not next week. I'm gonna be out tomorrow. Hello, world. So I'm gonna be out tomorrow. I'm going to visit my daughter. And Rep Campbell will be back. And so he can, he'll walk us through the day and stuff. And then we're still working on the agenda for next week. It's kind of coming together, but just so you guys know where I think or where I hope we're heading is that we have one energy bill that made crossover that came over from the Senate. It's S50. And so I am hoping that we can pass that out and, bring that bill to some sort of logical conclusion so that we got a bill, and I think we need to try to pass it. So our options with S50, we'll get some more testimony in next week, and then we'll have a committee discussion to really walk through it and say like, okay, we've heard testimony on this, we've heard testimony on that. What do we want to do? There are a couple ways we could go with S50. Right now, it's a very narrow bill.
Go ahead.
That as it came over, really just it's the 25 is the new 15. And it has the municipal setback question added into it that we can strip out or find our way through. So that is S50 as it currently stands. We've had a request or a pitch, basically, that we pull out that one section of H394, the single plant stuff that we heard about yesterday, and add that to S50. We could do that if we want to, or we could hear more testimony on that. And then a bigger thought I had, but I honestly don't know if we're going to be able to get there, is what we could do as a committee is work through how the bill currently stands, get the PUC back in, say, what do you guys think? We could figure out whether we want to add that little single plant thing from 394, add it, skip it. We could just do those things and send back to the Senate their narrow solar bill with our little changes. They could accept it as we changed it and be like, we're done. We passed S50. They could disagree and send it back to us. So it could bounce back and forth a little bit. So we want to add time for that. If we want to take a big bite of the apple, the reason that we've been taking a little bit of testimony, the reason we had TJ come in, another piece of work, and that might be accurate. But we had TJ come in and present their Act 179 report on a successor program to group net metering and or community solar. The department is proposing that we replace group net metering with the REFOR-C program. That's what's in their Act 179 report. And that language, that basically the REFOR-C program is plunked into 289. And then VEC came in today. They've got their community solar program. So we could, what I'm kind of thinking makes sense is we could next week try to come to agreement on all the small parts of S50. We could talk about 25 to 15. We could talk about the municipal setbacks. We could talk about include or exclude the single plant stuff. And we could get that part of S50 sort of ready. We could do a straw poll. We could figure out how many votes we have for just that part of it and kind of then set that aside. And then we could spend a couple weeks or a week or two on community solar and see whether we think REFOR-C, we love it. REFOR-C is just going to go in, or like, we don't know about REFOR-C. It's complicated. We need weeks and weeks and weeks of testimony. Maybe we do that next year. Or maybe we love it and we just put it in there. We send it back to the Senate. So we have gates. I see eyebrows. Once I see eyebrows raising to the right. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking with S50. So I'd like to do the easy parts next week and just see, by easy, I mean, we can make decisions as a committee and I think we can get a chunk of the bill just kind of settled. It's, it's unanimous. It's 6-3. We've got a majority. And then this bigger reefer C thing, see if we can find a way to attach that
6-3,
or not.
maybe 5-4.
Or it could be 5-4
Or 7-2.
or 7-2. Well, I'm
In either
I'm
direction.
just guessing, basing on how the questions have been going. So about some of I call them the easier parts of S50, but they're a heck of a lot less complicated than reefer C, probably. Rep Howland.
With that addition of the floor amendment on the setbacks, I don't see setbacks being an issue in the portion of my people I represent that have large lots. But as far as application in the villages, and I don't know a lot of villages where I see a lot of solar if they're not rooftop. But the mayor of Rutland was in the building yesterday or the day before, and his development regional planning, his planning person is on vacation. And I just don't know how many, the cities or the villages, I mean, the setbacks, whether you're just eliminating people with small lots to be able to have ground mounted solar.
Yeah.
If they, in a house, if their home can't support it or doesn't face the right way.
So we've all got a little bit of time to think about it. I think we're not going to decide right now, obviously. I mean, Brett Morrow isn't even here, but so that's sort of my, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. I'm thinking we want to get S50 back to the Senate. I want to get that out of committee, bring it to the floor. It's a live bill. They worked on it. It's our only live energy bill at the moment. So I think it'd be good work for us to vote that out, get it back to the Senate, see if we can get something across the finish line this year. So we'll take more testimony, give everybody time to think. And then at some point next, whatever, Thursday or something, maybe we will have taken enough testimony. We'll all have had time to think about it. And I think we should walk through the small parts of the bill and take some straw polls, yay or nay. What do you think about this? Who else do we need to hear from? Where are we at with 25 to 15 municipal setbacks and the single plant thing? Those three parts. And then whether we can come to any kind of resolution this year on reefer C, I don't know, but we need to talk about it. We need to figure it out at some point. It could be we start this year and do it next year type of thing. I don't know. Does that sound like a plan?
And there's no ask of us about solar for all. That was just kind of a check.
It's just a thing. Yeah, it's just a thing.
I think I'm getting that one mixed up with.
So,
Just having a focus on one bill is a plus to me.
yeah. Well, it's our live thing. So one thing I'd like to do is, for me, I think it would be helpful is we'll get back in maybe some follow-up testimony or something. And then if you guys don't mind, and I think this is going to vibe with Rep Southworth, I think, what I think we could do then is maybe we could all schedule a big block of community discussion time, out live on YouTube. We'll set aside 2 hours or whatever we think we need. Because I know what I need to do is I need to, as a group, literally sit with all the testimony we've taken, because now it's scattered over a couple of weeks, and walk back through it. Okay, we heard from so-and-so, and here's what we talked about. We heard from so-and-so, and here's what we talked about. I'd love to, as a committee, walk through the bill and walk through the testimony and get ourselves all reset on everything we heard, all the competing opinions and stuff. And then we can start doing straw polls or whatever. Does that sound like a a thoughtful plan. I'm gonna need time as a committee to go back over everything we've heard.
Well, the time is a committee. Absolutely.
Okay, so we could even do that first before we even get testimony back in. We've heard from everybody at this point. We've heard from the league, we've heard from the PUC.
Some solar developers, I think, right?
We do, we've heard from Rev. And we do have some solar developers who want to come in. We could at that point regroup and go back through everything we've heard so far and decide whether we even need to hear from anybody again. Like the league would just simply come back and say what they've already told us. PUC has already come in and told us what they're going to tell us. So maybe we just need to.
So fill out this question to the League of Cities and Towns about setbacks.
Hmm?
I still have that question to the League of Cities and Towns on setbacks. That's an important thing to me, to hear what their people they represent think of those setbacks. How will that affect those municipalities?
You might want to email them, Rep Southworth. Because I did, and this is nothing official, but I did catch them in passing in the cafeteria, as we all do. And their testimony as they've presented it to us, that's their position on the bill. And I don't think that they ask them whether they have the time or capacity to want to go out to all their members and get. Why don't you ask them? See what they say. Because we hear a lot actually from. Yeah, no, I see you. I just we often hear from associations or groups.
Yeah,
and
they represent the towns that we represent.
Yeah, and they'll come in with a position on a bill, and it's like, well, here's our position, and their position may not represent the individual opinion of
Every town.
or some percentage of the towns that they represent. So email them. And or we can, maybe we do our group reset, we walk through all of our testimony, and then we see what remaining questions each of us have individually that we can go get answered.
So I've chatted with a few solar developers and solar trade groups and so forth. We're all pretty confident that no one is installing solar right by the road. That it's too expensive, it's too easy to get damaged, it gets dirty, it's just a bad place to site. And there's often all kinds of, you have a driveway, then they might bang it up, or whoever plows the driveway. So I'm much less concerned about that, which, I had a safety concern, which you heard, but that has been answered. So to my mind, the setback question now is, how often are there disputes on structures built close to property line between neighbors?
Okay.
And I think I don't know, who has a sense of how often that happens in certain circumstances.
The PUC, and then I am becoming a little uncomfortable with the fact that I said we were adjourning, Rep Morrow left.
This is around there.
And we're having a substantive conversation about a bill without one of our members being here. The longer it goes on, the more I'm thinking
Okay, yeah, fair, sorry.
So, but, and then
Understood.
I didn't mean for it to go on this long
I didn't
without
either.
Chris being here. Yeah. Well, I don't ever want to look like I'm cutting off a really important conversation. I'm always hardwired to hang around until everybody's had a chance to weigh in. Yeah.
I can answer Rick Suffer's question if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay, so after I testified, or I was answering questions last, what was it, yesterday, 2 days ago? Went back, I talked to some of my colleagues who also work on, and we all work on net metering projects. And they hadn't encountered any disputes with regard to setbacks. There was one case someone remembered, it had to do more with historical district covenant kind of things, but other than that, nothing about the setbacks. We haven't encountered that. Okay. It doesn't mean people aren't ticked off. about a neighbor's solar panel just means they haven't brought it to
Doesn't come
us.
to you.
So,
I do remember, I'll just share briefly, an HR director I worked with once. I'm sorry. I know you want to adjourn, but.
We're off tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not about
No,
that,
no,
it's just,
I just, there was an HR director I worked with, and I remember a conversation, someone, I don't remember what it was, dogs in the office or someone, that someone came in and said, we need a policy about this. And she said, do we need a policy or do we need a conversation? And if in fact disputes about property are so rare as that none has ever come to the PUC's attention, perhaps we don't need a policy. Perhaps if it ever happens, a conversation is enough. I will leave it at that because I know you'd like to adjourn.
I, Rep Bailey.
I know I said my utility one, is he on the schedule from the Village High Park?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry.
15.
Yes, I forgot. Jack. I'm sorry. Rep Bailey has requested witness on S50 that he will get the name to you, and please get them on the schedule because I completely
Yeah.
spaced on them.
I've already got their contact. I can.
Okay,
That's all.
Sorry. Rep Torrey, let's just keep,
Really short.
why don't we vote right now,
Just
actually?
because you're talking about witnesses.
Oh, my God.
Do we think, do we have time to hear from the PUC about the Read for C program?
Yeah, so
Because
there is,
What is that? You keep
Okay.
saying that, I'm
renewable energy
well,
for community
we'll probably get
successor
to
program too.
yeah, so here's,
Renewable
Renewable
energy
for
for
community.
communities.
From the department.
That's a good one.
it's in the Act 179 report
Act
from
one-
DPS.
Okay. Have you had a presentation
We
on it that
have.
I could look at? Okay, so
Yeah,
it'll be on
if
your,
we have legislative language you can look at, and you guys are all in.
I would love to look at it and
It hasn't we haven't gotten very far with this. That's why I said I am expressing
It's in
interest.
289, it's in H.
It's in 289, like we
And
need,
it's also in a standalone bill.
it's a department solar
yes,
program? Oh, okay.
it has
Yeah,
a
I am
nickname.
familiar with
It's
that.
their community solar.
I
it has
didn't
a
know they had a nickname, but
So-
yes, I am familiar with
So
it.
just to reiterate, yes, Representative Sevilla.
We have been here for 2 hours without a break and I appreciate this conversation, but I'm gonna have to exit the room shortly.
Yes, we're adjourned. Jack, we can go off live.
Okay, before we go offline, what did the tree say at 5?